Before this video starts, I just have a couple of things that I want to say. First of all, this is sort of a bit of a disclaimer. Unfortunately, with this album, I and Chris, who is my guest on this video, who will listen to this album with me, we did not care for the way this album was mixed. So I guess spoiler alert, this is a very negative review. However, before you click away, if you're a big fan of Scar Symmetry, just know that I really think that this video has a lot of value to it, because in this video you can watch two people who do, for the most part, know what they're talking about when they're talking about audio. You can watch us try to figure out why we don't like the way something sounds, and I feel like it's an interesting thing to sort of talk about. I mean, it's why we're here all the time. I prefer obviously discussing why I like something rather than why I don't. But in this case, I think this video is interesting in different ways than other videos on my channel are. And so if you're an audio person, I highly recommend watching this. You can skip the songs if you want and just listen to us talking in between to try to sort of figure out what's going on. So I want to say, right away, we did not listen to this entire album, which I know might be very bad, and I felt guilty when we decided not to do it at the time, and I feel guilty even still now. However, I do also feel okay with my decision. So what you're going to see in this video for the first half hour is me talking about how much I love Scar Symmetry and how I'm basically not worried that this album's going to sound bad at all. I'm going to discuss their discography. I'm going to discuss how I feel about them. I'm going to talk to Chris about, what they've done in the past, what I sort of expect from this new album. And all of that was before I'd heard any of this. I had not heard a single. I had not heard a little 10-second sample on Facebook. I had heard nothing. So be aware of that. After the first half hour, when we actually start listening to this album, what I'm going to do, because of the nature of this review and this reaction, and because Chris and I were just sort of in general confused and trying to figure out so much, like why we were trying to figure out when we were listening why we weren't enjoying what we were hearing. A vast majority of the songs were just basically sitting there silent with somewhat confused and disappointed looks on our faces. And so what I'm going to do for the first time in this video to try to help it be able to be uploaded with the music in it, because I have been having trouble with that on my channel recently, what I'm going to do is cut out the long sections of the video when we're actually listening to the music where we're not saying anything. So I will chop the songs up a little bit. Now, unfortunately, due to the nature of YouTube and, syncing stuff up and everything, if I upload this video and it still gets a copyright claim and I can't have the video, what I'll have to do is revert back to having the full song in there, and I will take the music out so that you watching the video can hit play along with us on whatever extra device or Spotify or whatever, however you have watching the video, and listen along with us so you can sort of know what we're talking about. Again, the most important part of this video is what Chris and I are saying in between when we're listening to the songs, when we're trying to discuss what is going on with the mix and trying to sort of speculate what has happened. I'm filming this video right now a week or so after we did that, and I've just finished editing the video, at least up to this point. I'm going to have to still fiddle with it and insert this and everything into it. So just know I feel bad about this video, but I feel like it's a really good, maybe going to be a bit of an educational tool for people. It was fun and educational for me and Chris to do it, just so we were trying to figure out what was wrong with the mix. One last thing I have to say is that Chris even makes a joke about this in the video, but sometimes when I'm listening to an album that's mixed very poorly, for example, on my channel, you can go back and listen to my reactions to the brand new Heavy album that came out this year called Amen. You can go back last year to when the Black Keys album, Dropout Boogie, came out. Both of those albums had the same issue where they had no high end in the mix at all. And it was egregiously bad. In my opinion, objectively bad decisions were made to make the album sound like that. When Chris and I were listening to phase 1 or phase 2 here in this video, we didn't think that that was going to be the case. However, in my editing the video, when I was editing with my earbuds, I thought the song sounded much better. But so I went and got my headphones that I used when I was listening, my much wider range, frequency range, much better quality headphones. And I started listening to it, and I started futzing around with a little bit of an EQ. And I think that it made the song sound better. Now, I know it's not necessarily fair to just A/B stuff like this. And on my headphones, it didn't necessarily make the mix sound better on my earbuds, but it did on my headphones. So I know that's kind of confusing. So what I'm going to do in this video is, for a small portion of the song in tracks 1 and track 2, so chronologous, sorry, whatever track 1 is on this album, and then track 2, the 2 sort of singles that were released, I'm going to have clearly labeled on screen when the music is playing. I'm going to have clearly labeled no EQ, and then for a short section, I will turn on an EQ, and I'll even have a picture of the EQ that I did, just some very simple EQing. And if you're not familiar with what that is, just listen, use your ears, and see what you think. Basically, all I did was add some high frequencies, duck out a little bit of the lows and the mids. And I am not a mastering engineer. I just spent like maybe 10 minutes messing around with the EQ plugin. And so I didn't do it in such a way to say, like, here's how it should sound. My point with doing this is to just purely say, if I did this very simply and you listen to it and you think it sounds better, I feel like that proves my point in that there's something that's sort of objectively wrong. Now, also, I will have to say just real quick that mastering is a very difficult thing. I think mastering is, at the end of the day, what went wrong with the mixing of this album. Well, mastering and mixing are different, but I think you know what I mean. So just be aware of that. I'm on one hand, I'm so disappointed with this video, but on the other hand, I'm very proud of how Chris and I tried to talk to each other and figure out what was wrong, and using our analogies and things that we have experience in both of our different fields of audio to try to come up with and figure out why this album was disappointing to us. So please enjoy this video. Thank you very much for watching. I'll try to have things labeled on screen. I'll have timestamps in the description of the video so you can click around and see what you want. If you do take nothing else from this video, go through and listen to tracks 1 and 2 on the album, skip to them, we're listening to those, and see when I put the EQ on there, and see what you think yourself. So that's all I need to say. Let's get right into the video now. Today, for the very first time, after 9 years of waiting, we all finally get to hear Scar Symmetry's brand new album, The Singularity Phase 2 Xenotaph.
I didn't realize it was called Phase 2. It's like, it's so... Go ahead.
No, let's just get right into it, because
it's so funny that they call it that. Like, there's this old comedian named Stephen Wright, and his first album from 1987 is called I Have a Pony, and then his second album from like 2010 is called I Still Have a Pony, and it just makes me think about the fact that 30 years between albums, and he just gave it a slightly different name.
Well, right, Mel Brooks made The History of the World Part 1 and back in the 70s, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then The History of the World Part 2 just came out on Hulu or whatever this year, I think. So
good.
Or something like that. But no, I'm so glad you bring that up as being kind of silly, because this album was supposed to come out in 2015, the year after Phase 1 came out. And
why is it?
All of a sudden, they just, here's 9 years, 9 years later. But we'll get into talking about Scar Symmetry a little bit more in a second. First, I have to say hello, everybody, and welcome back to another album review / reaction on my channel. You have probably not been here before, and that's fine, because we welcome all newcomers, especially if you're Metallica fans, because we've been doing lots of Metallica videos on my channel here. I've been doing a lot of them with Chris.
That's me.
Yep, that's him. I'm Patrick. Thank you very much for joining us if this is your first time. If you have been with us for a while and you are here because you've been subscribed and all this awesome stuff, thank you very much for doing so. And you've been watching the Metallica videos probably. We just released Load a few days ago. I'm very excited with how everybody is loving that. Chris,
good.
we are getting so much love for Load. There's so much love for Load out there. And I was so scared that people were going to be mad that we were enjoying it and having fun. And everyone's like, no, that's people, that's old metal dudes. That's metal dudes back in the day when they were just too scared to admit that they liked it because it was so different. And a lot of people did comment and say, like, hey, this now, with the passage of time, people really appreciate Load and Reload a lot. And there's a lot of people looking forward to Reload. So
I've actually been listening to Reload in my car the last few days in anticipation for eventually doing that.
Oh, yeah.
And that one has a much stronger nostalgia factor for me than Load does. Load I didn't get to till years later, but like I said, that was the one that I started with, and There's some bangers on there. I think Load might be a better album, but
I was going to say,
some good
a lot
bangers.
of people have commented that they think possibly that Load is a little bit better than Reload, but
Mm-hmm.
a few people said that they thought the best songs off of Reload are better than the best songs off of Load. And we'll see, because I thought, in my opinion, if you remember, I thought that King Nothing and Ain't My
Mm-hmm.
track 1 and Ronnie were my 3 favorite songs.
Yeah.
And most people didn't care for Ronnie that much. So that
Yeah,
was
that doesn't surprise me.
a little bit different. And then also, a lot of people love Bleeding Me. Like that was
That's
like
because
one
that
of
song rules.
like the universal song. And the more I was listening to it, I was like, this might be my actual, like, maybe second favorite song on the album. I think I really like that song a lot. But we're not here to talk about Metallica. We're here to talk about Scar Symmetry, and I want to
That's
get
right.
into the music as soon as we can. But first, I have to say, I sent the Scar Symmetry dudes a message on Facebook, and I asked them, "Hey, I want to do a reaction to your album. Is that okay?" And I don't know if they necessarily understood what I meant, because they were like, "Hey, that's cool. Let us know what you think." And I was thinking,
That's the
well,
plan.
we were going to talk about it for an hour or 2 hours here to let you know what we think. So hopefully in this video we'll be able to use the audio from the album. If not, you're recording your audio, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, thanks, Chris. I love you. You're so great. But okay, if we can't use the audio from the album and you can't hear exactly what we're hearing, and I can't include it in the video, I'll include links, and I'll include it in there regardless, like some sort of like a link tree link to buy the album, stream it wherever you want. If we can't do it, I'll have to include a link, and you can try to sync it up with us. I will count down every song. That's been working really good, Chris. I'll count down every song. Chris and I will play it on our own respective ends, and we'll talk about it a little bit. Maybe while we're listening, we'll talk a little bit between each track as well, sort of what we think. That's how this video is going to kind of go. And then after we're done with the whole thing, if Chris is still here, because we have time, I don't know if you have to, like I have to leave at a certain time.
I don't really, but I do have a lot of work to do, so I'm trying to.
Okay.
Move it
Well,
along
we'll
here.
see. If we are going just ridiculously long and you're not having fun, or you're not enjoying the album as much, because
Yeah.
we'll talk about Scar Symmetry in a second, but it's not necessarily my impression from you that you like absolutely love this band or anything.
No, I have almost no real exposure to them outside of what you have showed me over the years,
Yeah.
and since it's been 9 years, I probably haven't listened to them in at least 6.
Yeah, I'm sure. Okay, so if at some point you're like, I think my time would be better spent doing work, just let me know. You can leave. I'll finish this myself. No big deal. I'm going to be totally honest and say, when I asked you to do this review with me, I was thinking there was like a 20% chance you would say yes. And so I was more sort of just doing it out of like,
That's funny because
I need to ask Chris if he wants to do some reactions with me just so that he can be included on stuff other than Metallica. But I wasn't thinking you were actually going to say yes. And the fact that you're here, though, is like one of the reasons I'm excited, because I'm like,
Okay.
yes, let's go. Because
that's so funny because like 3,000 times in the last 2 days, I have thought I really got to tell him that I'm too busy for this.
Oh.
But I told him I would do it, and he wants me to do it, so I'm going to do it.
we're going to have fun. We're going to have fun. Don't worry about it. Now, I did want to mention, because it's so brand new and fresh and it's exciting, I don't know if this is exactly all the work you have to do, but you just had one of the big projects you've been working on forever. Finally, like, I think it's been unveiled before, right?
Yeah, we had the reveal trailer was at E3 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Or at the very least last year, which seems like it wasn't that long ago, but I don't know. I can't tell anymore. But yeah, we had the reveal trailer a year or two ago at E3, and then we just had our demo announcement and demo drop, and otherwise second trailer drop yesterday during the Devolver Direct, and it's wonderful. People are very pleased so far.
Yeah, I saw you had 40. The link you sent me about an hour, 2 hours ago was the IGN video of it.
Oh yeah,
And it had 41,000 views on it so far. I'm sure that will only go up because it's only been up a day.
yeah. We had the reveal trailer from E3 last year or whenever it was. I swear it had to be 2 years ago. But between 3 different channels, it totaled like 3.5 million views. So I would like to think that interest hasn't disappeared that much.
Oh, I wouldn't think so. The video
Yeah.
game industry is one of those strange industries where it is really strange, where you can see like the first trailer for like a game announcement trailer, and in your brain you're like, this looks like the coolest thing ever, and then you don't hear about it for years and years, and then the next time you see it you're like, that's right, there was this game that looked
Yeah.
like this with this, this music and stuff. Then you get all hyped for it again, and usually that's when you get like a release announcement or whatever. So which, is there a release for this?
This year. We haven't nailed
Oh,
the
you haven't
date
said,
yet.
okay. But what we're talking about, so people know what we're talking about, is the game Chris has been working on the sound design for.
Oh, yeah.
Called,
Sound designer for Wizard with a Gun.
right.
Yeah, we
And
just had a
and I have to
Devolver.
ask you, because you've been talking to me about it a little bit here and there over the last many years, you always call it Whiz Gun. Is that what it was
Right.
supposed to be called?
No, it's called Wizard with a Gun. It's just WizGun is the short.
Right,
shorthand
that makes
for it.
total sense. See, I've been thinking it was Whiz Gun this whole time,
That's
but
funny.
it's Wizard with a Gun is way cooler than Whiz Gun, but Whiz Gun's actually kind of cool too. But
Yeah.
Whiz Gun kind of makes you think of like a pea gun, you know, like a whiz gun. But
Yeah.
anyway, Wizard with a Gun is just badass. The trailer looks so cool. Can I link to it in my video?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
go wild.
We'll do that. I'll definitely do that. We'll see. Now, this is one of my non-Metallica videos, so if we manage to get over like 400 views on this, it would be like a miracle. But who cares? We're going to have a lot of fun, and my channel is not about views. It's about having fun. So thank you for joining us. Like I said, if this is your first time, it's going to be chaos. Speaking of chaos and Chaos Weaver, that being the very first track off of Scar Symmetry's very first album, Symmetric in Design.
Ooh, what a segue.
Thanks. I was working on them because I was actually on an episode of Alohomora earlier this week, and man, did I kill it.
Ooh,
I did
hell
so
yeah.
good. I did so good. It was great. So Scar Symmetry, I have to say, this for me growing up, there was like 6 really seminal metal bands for me, but I've always talked about my big 4 because I know the big 4 in the industry is like, I think it's Megadeth, Motorhead, or no, it's Metallica, Slayer,
Metallica, Slayer, Megadeth, and Anthrax.
and
Apparently.
Anthrax are like the big 4 sort of.
Which is crazy. I have a Blu-ray, a live Blu-ray of the Big Four.
Right.
And that's what it's called. And it had those bands, and I was like, Anthrax?
Well, I think, well, the thing is, Anthrax was Anthrax was a very important band. I think
you're gone.
even before Metallica became a band.
Oh, for Pete's sake.
All right. Well,
I'm back. I'm glad it
Okay.
let me rejoin. Usually it doesn't let me do that.
Yeah,
Or at least
well-
usually when I try, it's still black. So
Okay, so who knows if that happens a few more times, we can just kind of give it up if you want to just go work instead.
yeah.
But we are still recording. So Chris just dropped. I don't know how much that I'll leave in. It was probably pretty funny because I was talking to the camera and then I looked over and it's just a black screen. So that's what it is. What it is. But what I was saying was, for me, it was In Flames and Soilwork. Those were sort of like the 2 big metal
sure.
bands, and then Demon Hunter, Nemec, Raunchy, and Scar Symmetry. So that's 7, I guess. But to me, I've always said In Flames, Soilwork, Scar Symmetry, and Demon Hunter were the like 4 for me. And Scar Symmetry, man, I'll tell you, they were special to me because I first heard of them when I saw this CD in Hastings in Norfolk, Nebraska. I was looking through the CD section as I am wont to do, or I was when the store was still a thing, and I saw this CD there, and it said on the sticker, "For fans of Soilwork and Dark Tranquility." And I was like, you know what?
What a
I'm
thing
a-
to show on the. Yeah, that's great.
I'm a big fan of Soilwork, and so I thought, I'm gonna do it. So I think it was $11.99, and at the time I was a college student, and so I just totally, on a whim, bought this album, and it was a good decision. So I'm a big fan of Scar Symmetries. I'll just go through real quick. I have Butterfingers. I have their first album, Symmetric in Design. I have their second album, Pitch Black Progress. I have their whole album. Holographic Universe,
What year did that first album come out?
2005.
Oh,
Then their second album was 2006, was Pitch Black Progress. Then 2008 is Holographic Universe. Then we have 2009, the following year after their lead singer left. See, these 3 albums, Holographic Universe, Pitch Black Progress, and Symmetric in Design, are the lead vocalist, the only vocalist in the band at the time, was Christian Alveston, one of my all-time favorite metal vocalists. And he left after their third album. And I thought, well, Scar Symmetry is done. And they said, no, we're not. Here's this album. This is Dark Matter Dimensions. And then we have The Unseen Empire. And then I have, holy cow, from 9 years ago, this is Singularity, Phase 1, Neo-Humanity.
wow.
And then we were supposed to be getting the following year in 2015, Singularity Phase 2, Xenotaph. And there was all sorts of a kerfuffle. And I believe one of the main reasons for that, in 2017, the main songwriter, at least now, the primary songwriter for Scar Symmetry is a guy named Per Nelson. and he is a beast of a guitar player, complete shredder. He is a fantastic guitar player, and he's one of the people that when I started listening to Kirk Hammett, I was like, I've heard guitar players way better than Kirk Hammett, and this is like the guy I was thinking of. But I'm not here to trash Metallica or whatever. Metallica's great, Kirk Hammett's great, love those guys. But Per Nelson to me is like one of the most like technically gifted guitar players in any of the bands that I listen to. He's absolutely insane, and on their first albums, all the way up until sort of their most recent one, Singularity Phase 1. They had two guitar players that would sort of trade back and forth solos, and that they did shared sort of songwriting. And actually on their first three albums, Christian Alveston wrote some of the songs as well. So it was more of a collaborative effort, but some people have left the band over the years. And now at this point where we're at right now, Per Nelson is sort of like the main primary songwriter of the band. I don't have a copy of the new album, or I would be looking in the liner notes for that, but I don't have access to that yet. I will order this on CD, and I will be getting it later, unless it sounds like absolute garbage trash, which I'm absolutely positive it's not going to.
So you haven't heard any of this?
I have not heard a second of it.
It's been a while since we both have never heard anything that we're about to hear.
Yeah, it has. I will say I did screw up a little while ago because I have the files here, and I clicked play on the first track just to see what the level would be like and everything, and I probably shouldn't have done that because in the first 10 seconds I heard some pretty amazing stuff. So when I'm going to send you a link here in a second, Chris. You can bring it up, but don't listen to anything because I think the way that the album starts is actually really cool, and I want to get your reaction to it. So Per Nelson is their main songwriter now, and I know that he got the honor of being asked to join and play for Meshuggah the last like 6-7 years. And most people will know in the metal industry, Meshuggah is like one of the most influential bands of all time. And for him and Scar Symmetry's style, Meshuggah definitely a huge influence. And so he's been playing in Meshuggah, and he's been doing other really awesome things in the industry. He actually produced and recorded and mixed and did some mastering for several relatively cool projects between their last album and this one. And so I think what actually ended up happening was he just kind of got busy, and then everyone else in the band got busy as well. And it wasn't until now, post-pandemic, that they decided to get together and finally release Phase 2. And I have really been giving them as a band a hard time on Facebook for the last like 5 years or so, because every time they would post something, people would be like, yeah, well, when are we going to get Phase 2? And I was kind of like, yeah, I kind of agree with that, idiot. If you're going to call your album Phase 1, like Volume 1, and then you take a 9-year break between that and Volume 2, it's kind of like, it kind of sucks. And they have also said in statements in these in-between years here that they really wish they wouldn't have named it that, because they would have come back now with something that wasn't like a phase. They could have done a whole new project instead of continuing this like story sort of Phase 1.
Yeah.
But I think that they totally got into it. And the really cool thing about it is Phase 1 is all about humanity sort of being taken over by artificial intelligence and machines. And there's like a bit of like a robot sort of theme and everything to it. And just the Singularity in general, because it's the Singularity Volume 1 or Phase 1 and the Singularity Phase 2. And so they've been having a lot of fun in the last like 3 months or so leading up to the release of the new album that just came out today. They made all this like AI created artwork for the album and all this stuff.
Cool.
And people were like really crawling all over for them. And they're like, no, you're totally missing the point. Like the point of this is that our actual album artwork was all done by a guy that we paid to do it. It's all ours and everything. But to promote the album, we're going to be using AI tools that are available now. And it all links into like the theme of the album and the theme of all this stuff. So like it's really cool. They're doing a really good job of like playing with it. Scar Symmetry never takes themselves seriously. I'm sure you probably don't remember, Chris, but like Scar Symmetry song lyrics are all like, they're all something like, breaking down the catalyst of the secondary equation of the fourth quadrant in the seventh sun of the light of the 14,000 millivolts to the seventh amp omega, Orion to the cataclysmic, whatever. Like none of it makes any sense whatsoever. Yeah. It's all just like math jargon and science fiction jargon and stuff. And I know it does have sort of like an overarching theme and stuff, but like, on my channel, we're not here for themes and meanings. We don't care about those type of things. We're just going to talk about whether the album sounds good or not.
Yeah.
And I don't doubt that this album's going to sound good because it is made the same way that their Volume 1 was. So Per Nelson recorded, mixed, and mastered the entire album, I believe himself. I think he did mastering. But he basically did everything himself, and I actually think that Phase 1 is the best sounding album, I think, in their catalog, maybe. But Scar Symmetry has always been known for several things in my mind. Very technical playing and also very, very, very well recorded. Even their very first album is really well recorded. And I definitely think their first album doesn't sound as good as their previous albums. To me, on several occasions, when I talk about metal music to people that I don't know very much, they're like, well, what's like your favorite metal album? Like, what's a good metal album? And you and I, Chris, have talked in the past, like, if you could only pick like one metal album to show someone and be like, this is metal, what would you pick? To me, I would probably pick a Scar Symmetry album. It has absolutely everything encompassed into one big package. Everything that I like about metal is here. And I like all of their albums for different reasons. I think Dark Matter Dimensions is their worst album. I think Pitch Black Progress, their second album, is their best album. And I've told you in our last few videos, Chris, that over the last year or so, I've been going through all my favorite albums, trying to decide what my top 20 are. Spoiler alert, Scar Symmetry's second album, Pitch Black Progress, is going to be in my top 20 for sure, and I think it may actually be my favorite metal album of all time.
Ooh, what a claim.
Yeah, favorite metal album of all time. And
I don't know what I would answer if somebody asked me, if there was one metal album to be the ultimate definition of metal without anything else, what would it be from my perspective? And I do not have an answer to that.
Yeah, it's a crazy thing to think about, and I think that, to me, combination of clean vocals and harsh vocals is sort of like a must.
Yep.
And I don't think that there's any band that necessarily does this as good as this band. A lot of the bands that you like, Chris, they lose me when it gets to the clean vocals. That's sort of my problem with the band. And I feel like a lot of the bands that I like, they would maybe lose you with the sort of more harsh vocals side of things.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned, because you just said a combination of clean and harsh is a must, but then when you get to the clean vocals in mind, you're done. And it's
Right.
like, is it because of the type of vocal, or is it like the percentage?
No, it's totally the way it sounds. It's just a style of singing that I feel like sounds whiny to me and I don't care for. And we're not going to get that here at all, especially with their last album, Phase 1, which, again, it sounds so crazy to say that was 9 years ago, but that album had their most like prog metal feeling to it. So there was I'm assuming what we're going to get is a majority clean vocals on this album. But when we get distorted, harsh vocals, we are going to get our entire bodies ripped apart into shreds. That is what this is going to be like, I hope. Because when Christian Alveston left the band, and one of the reasons I loved him was because he did low grunts, he did the growls, but he also had like a higher pitched sort of like a screamy growl thing. And it was the combination of those two that I loved in terms of the harsh stuff. And I just love his singing voice in general. He has a singing voice that's sort of reminiscent of the way Bjorn sings in Soilwork. And on the third album that they did with him, they did a lot of vocal harmonies. He was doing like crazy harmony stuff all over the place, to the point where it was getting almost ridiculous and comical, which that's Holographic Universe I'm talking about for anybody following along. And then he left the band, and they had to get two singers to replace him. So now they have two lead vocalists, one guy that does harsh lead vocals, and then background sung vocals. And then they have a guy who does lead singing vocals and background harsh vocals. And then Per Nelson himself also does some like gang vocals and singing vocals, but he's not listed as a lead vocalist. Per Nelson is also the guy that does all of the keyboards that we're going to hear, and there's going to be a lot of those in this. And so, yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to say about Scar Symmetry. I talked a little longer than I needed to, but I could talk about them forever. But I know we're running on a little bit of a time, and this album itself is an hour long. Okay. So I want to get to it. One thing I did want to say was, one really kind of crappy thing about Phase 1 here is that there's eight songs on this album. The total running time is 43 minutes.
That's not bad.
There's 8 tracks, but the first track is 52 minutes and it's an intro.
52 minutes.
52 seconds, I'm sorry. Okay. Very sorry. 52 seconds, and it's an intro.
Okay.
And track 6 is a 2.5 minute long instrumental song.
Then what it has is 6 tracks.
You have done your math correctly, sir. There are only 6 real songs.
Intro tracks are not tracks.
Right. And intermission tracks are not songs. There's tracks, they're not songs.
Right. Yeah, intro
And
tracks are not songs.
I love having those things on an album, but if you're only going to give me an album with 8 tracks and 2 of those tracks aren't songs and you're only giving me 6 songs, you done kind of cheated me there a little bit.
But I mean, it's made up for by the length.
Exactly.
43 minutes.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. We have the first actual song on the album is 8 minutes and 43 seconds long. The last track on the album is 10 minutes and 12 seconds long. And
Wow.
those are full-length songs. Sometimes they do have a little bit of like a sound effects thing go on for like a minute or so after the song is over, but I think that stuff is really cool. That we might hear some like aliens landing and stuff like that in between the songs, but I like that kind of stuff. So this new album is 58 minutes long.
11 tracks.
11 tracks, 58 minutes long. Now, I do know that they went into the studio to start recording this in 2015.
Oh, wow.
However, I think that they scrapped everything that they did, and this is all new stuff that they started during the pandemic and since then.
Interesting.
So, okay, all right. Oh, real quick, I have to go get my pop because I got a pop.
Okay.
So I have to go do that. I'll be right back in just 1 second.
Sounds good.
Look right here on my table. Oh, no. I snapped away Chris. I snapped.
Hold on.
No, I'm making a joke that I snapped you away. This is my last Mountain Dew Summer Freeze. Son. Come on.
All right.
Well, we've got some bad news.
Oh?
My pop froze. This is a travesty, Chris.
Whoops.
But I'm going to let it go for now. And hope that I can... This is my last ever summer freeze.
Oh, no.
Unless I can get some more. But it's been hard
I will.
to find it.
As silly as whatever, as I think that your whole pop thing is,
Yeah.
it's really impressive of Mountain Dew to constantly be just dumping out these flavors of everything all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's neat.
I agree. And you know...
And what's the point of life if it can't have silliness in it?
Oh, absolutely. And, yeah, I don't know what I was going to say. Probably something funny or stupid or whatever. So, all right. Are you ready to listen to track 1, which is called Chrono Nautilus?
Great. Off to a great start.
Yeah. All right. You ready?
Yes.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. Acoustic guitars.
Ooh.
Very rare in a Scar Symmetry song.
Guest guitarist Joe Satriani.
Let's go. Ah! 3 minutes 45 seconds. 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 3 minutes 45 secon
Jesus.
That's black metal. Yeah.
Woo.
I'm literally sweating. My arm
That's
is
amazing.
shiny because I'm sweating. Oh my God. I couldn't even say anything the whole time because I was like, okay. Oh boy. Okay. Well,
It's crazy for them to just like sing while firing several machine guns and nothing else.
that was a really cool part. That was like a black metal part almost. That was
Yeah.
really cool that they have done certain things like that in the past. And that's like one of the things that I like about this band is that they do have a very consistent style, but more often than I think I realize they do, they just like switch up styles just a little bit. You know, one of my favorite songs of theirs is an 8-minute song off of Pitch Black Progress called Oscillation Point. And it's an 8-minute song, and the chorus has these like big strings in it, and it's like kind of it's fast. Like the whole song is very brrrr, but then when it gets to the chorus is a little bit slower and bigger. Bigger feeling. And then during the chorus, they switch and they go up an octave on the guitars for the riffs, and all of it turns into sort of like Metallica thrash salad stuff, and I absolutely love it. And then that's actually what I've said for many years is my all-time favorite guitar solo is the guitar solo in that song, because it feels like it's almost going through like the decades of metal and like the different styles and things. It's so cool. So this song, yeah, when I hit the button earlier to to play it, my computer was way too loud and it just exploded my ears. And I wish I'd have been recording and I would have gone, you would have seen me go, and like pull my headphones off because they have never started an album like that, just right into it. So my first thought about the mix, you think about your thoughts, because I want to know your thoughts on that song, because I would think if I showed you, I would not show you that song and be like, here, listen to this, you'll love this. I wouldn't do that. But for me, I will say with the mix, at first I was like, oh, this sounds like a downgrade. And I think that maybe because I've been listening to their whole catalog recently, but more specifically their two most recent albums, The Unseen Empire and Phase 1. And I think Phase 1 is just so well made. There's a lot of electronics in it, and you can feel like synth pads and things behind the song the whole time. Whereas here, the mix was a lot more, the song was very chaotic and very intense the whole time. But I feel like the way the guitars were recorded, that you can hear like less definition but maybe it's because he was playing slightly differently. But I feel like it was much more of like an open sound between like the riffs weren't as defined in terms of what they were actually doing. But that might have been a playing thing. That might have been like a style thing. It was hard for me to say. Now, one other thing I will say is that the bass player is gone now, and Per Nilsson played bass on this as well. So he played the guitars and bass, and then there is another guitar player in the band. But I think possibly for recording, Per Nilsson did all the guitars. I'm not sure. He may have done some rhythm stuff, the other guy. One of the things I was going to tell you before we started this was that you should always expect for us to get something bonkers in a Scar Symmetry bridge. Because they're one of those metal bands that just goes all out in the bridges. It can be that everything goes away and they do a little bit of like a soft thing, or more likely than not, that's sort of like the heaviest part of the song. And Scar Symmetry was the first band I ever heard that did like a really fast, low, grunty, and I'm not saying they're the first band to ever do it, but nowadays there's lots of bands that do that sort of like type of thing. That's like, I think is just like the coolest thing in metal. And they were the first band I ever heard do that kind of a stuff. And they on their earlier albums really played around with having that sort of low scream, low grunt, and then the higher pitched scream, and having those go like, well, like this part's low grunt, this part's low scream, and then the next part is both of them combined and things like that. And when I was recording Chris Schoenberg and doing all of his vocals for the Primal Waters project, that was what I had in mind the entire time we recorded his vocals, because Chris can do a higher scream and he can do a lower grunt or a growl. And so I would always have him like overdub things with the reverse of what he was doing, and that's how we made things feel really big and layered.
Yeah, that's really great.
And Scar Symmetry is the band that I like got that from. Again, not saying they're the first band to ever do that, but
Sure.
So how did you feel about that song in general and not really knowing what to expect too much? How did you feel?
In regards to the mix, I was initially surprised that it didn't have more like I would almost say frequency dynamics. Like it almost feels like it's missing some low end. But it's all very kind of flattened out in that way, or at the very least neutral in its presentation. But it doesn't sound bad. It's just a little bit distant in a kind of an older metal type of way. Like that is not like a new Icy Stars song, for example, would be Beef City. Like it would just be the biggest, hugest thing in the world.
Yeah, and I was kind of I was expecting it to sound a little bit more like that, more modern-y sounding. That was the thing that shocked me too, because like when I was listening to the kick drum, I was trying to like pick out the kick. The kick sounded like a very realistic sounding kick drum, which was not what I was expecting, because in the past their drums have all been very like machine gun or whatever style they're doing, but like the kick is like the most perfect sounding, like greatest sounding kick ever, because it's the exact same every time. Like it is a re-sampled kick, which I'm sure is probably what this is too, at least to some extent. But it really felt like, and maybe that song is like totally different because that's probably maybe like the heaviest song I've ever heard them do. So
interesting.
Yeah, so normally their songs start out quiet and they build, and then there's like an intro riff, and then the verses are all where they're screaming, and then the chorus is where there's clean singing. On their 3 most recent albums since Christian Alveston left, they didn't do a lot of layering of those different styles together. It was usually a pretty, and if it was a heavy part, there was usually a low growly vocal doing one take, and maybe on the ends of his phrases, like a hip hop verse, on the ends of the phrases, there'd be like a double or something. And then when it got to be singing, it was the guy singing with like 12,000 harmony parts in there, and it sounded sort of like Amaranth or something like that, like very harmonized to within an inch of its life, but also very prog metal. That's where the prog metal sort of sound comes into me, because when I first started getting into prog metal a little bit, I was like, oh, this is like Scar Symmetry without the heavy metal aspect of this, like the heavy metal part of it, just being more technical and all clean vocals. And Christian Alveston had a slightly different singing voice. This new guy, his voice I feel is very prog, like stereotypical, like Dream Theater prog metal sounding singing. But to say that, in this song, there was singing part behind screaming part, which I was very happy to hear.
Yeah, that was interesting.
And there was nice higher pitched scream and lower growl together. And like they did back and forths and stuff. And I really liked the vocals that whole song. I think once my ear sort of tuned itself to the song, I was able to enjoy it a little bit more, because you're right. I did start out thinking that it wasn't sounding as good. But I think by the end, I think I was a little bit more happy with what I was hearing.
Yeah,
so we'll
it
have
just
to
took
see.
some getting used to. But
now, how did you feel?
And
Okay, go
in
ahead.
terms of how the song itself, like for how I feel about it, the growly, like, guttural sort of stuff in the verses is the kind of thing that would probably stop me from listening to it. But those clean vocals in the chorus are fantastic. Reminds me a lot of Pendulum. And
sure.
yeah, in terms of like vocal, like timbre and stuff. So if this is the heaviest song that they have on this album, that would be really interesting.
Yeah. I see, one of the things that's sort of, I definitely like their first 3 albums more than their next 3 albums. And one of the reasons for that is because they used a lot more heavier vocals on their first 3 albums. And then after Christian Alveston left the band, I think that because everyone was starting to do vocal harmonies and singing and stuff in the background, like almost every member of the band is labeled as background harmony vocal, like background vocals. So even including like the drummer and the other guys in the band. So I think because of that, they went a lot more towards the singy side of things. Now, one thing I will say too, in listening to their whole catalog pretty recently, There are very few, if any, parts in their whole catalog where it's like a slow, like there's no ballads. They don't do any ballads. There's no moments where like it's slow electronic stuff and there's vocals over the top of it at all. It's always metal happening, but usually with singing over the top of it, and then that's sometimes accented with the growly, heavier vocals. So I was really surprised with a lot of the vocal stuff we were hearing in that song, and if that's like sort of indicating what we're going to hear throughout the album, I'm super happy with that.
That screaming and singing layered vocal part is really neat, and that's not something I recall hearing really anywhere else.
Yeah, a lot of the bands you listen to, it's one vocalist, right? So he has to do the screaming, and then he has to do the singing as well. And a lot of metal bands try to stay true to what they can do on stage, and so they don't do a lot of layering.
Or at the very least, they're like, you'll have two. Like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas has two vocalists, but they still did that layering seems pretty unique.
Yeah. Well, and that was one thing that Christian Alvesen used to do on their first 3 albums. I don't know how they performed any of that stuff live, because he would a lot of the times what he would do is he would do like his low growl and then his higher one, and he would like alternate them and then, like I said, overlap them. And then when it would get to the singing, he would do lots of singing, but there was also lots of singing with accents on the screaming, or they would be alternating and stuff. And I know there's no way he could have like redone that live. But now that they have like multiple vocalists in the band, they can do stuff like that. And I'm really glad that I hope they take advantage of that on this album.
Let's find out.
Yeah, let's do. I will say I'm surprised at the lack of electronics in that song, because usually lots of keyboards and things in their music, a lot of it's just sort of like programmed stuff. It reminds me a lot of Cybreed in terms of the way their electronics sound. But I did hear some actual piano playing in there, like a legit piano part, someone playing it, which that would have been, I believe, Per Nelson. So I'm curious to see if we get more of that kind of stuff. Okay, that was, by the way, Chris, that was single 1. This next one is single 2, Scorched Quadrant.
Oh, okay.
So the first 2 album songs are almost identical length, and they're the first 2 sort of singles from the album that they released. All right, are you ready for track 2?
I am.
All right, 3, 2, 1. Whoa, the bass part. The bass guitar is gone in this part of the song. No bass. Terrible.
And these choruses are so great. Love it. There is a lot of Demon Hunter in this.
Yeah. All right, what are we going to get here? Whoa. Key change. Okay, I find myself sort of fighting my disappointment here because this just doesn't sound as good to me. Like it doesn't sound as good as I think it should for what they've done in the past. And I keep fighting myself over whether I should be comparing it to their other music or not, because it says on their website like clearly like they're entering a new phase. They're excited about the people who are with them on tour now and all this stuff. They've got a new guitar player, a new bass player, all this. So they're excited to go. It says specifically on their website they're entering a new phase. They're excited to embark on their new journey touring and stuff. But to me, it just doesn't, like, unless they were like trying to go for a bit more of like a raw feel, because that's the word I keep thinking of. Like the guitars to me just do not sound as good as they have in the past. Like to me, Scar Symmetry was like the height of like good sounding metal, like as good as you could get metal to sound, using all the cheats, right? Like using all the replaced drums, using like editing to within the inch of its life, really good compression, really good, everything crisp, everything clear, everything very distinctly placed in the mix. The vocals definitely loud enough, everything sounding just 100% pristine, clear, perfect. And this does not sound like that. Like every element that I'm hearing to me feels like a downgrade sonically.
Interesting.
Like the raspy vocal, it sounds raw. Like it sounds like they gave him a microphone and said go, rather than okay, sing the part into the microphone. Now let's go process it. Now let's correct it. Let's do this. So that it sounds much more raw, which maybe that's what they were going for. The guitars to me don't have very much definition to them at all. They just sound like white noise, chunks of white noise that are every now and then stop. Like, which is not good. Like to me, Scar Symmetry, like I said, like it's the height of what I thought metal could sound like. If you would have asked me in my opinion, what like the best produced metal album is, the top 3 for sure is one of their albums. Easily, I would have said, and I can't even pick which one because some of their albums sound so phenomenally good, all of them. And so I'm fighting that. From a songwriting standpoint, I like what they're doing. There is way more of the harsh vocals than I anticipated there being. So I personally am really liking that.
Sure.
Now that song to me felt like it was in a lower key than they've ever done before. Like, so I don't know if they've gotten like they're down tuned to like A or some crazy thing, so that song was a little different. Like it felt like even the way the guy was like screaming was different sounding to me. Whereas before, I think they were trying to sound like Christian Alvesen. Now I feel like they're maybe not doing that anymore. Now they're just going to do their own thing. It's been long enough. They'll do their own thing. So I liked what was happening, but I do think that the clean vocals are a little low in the mix. I was going to ask you what you thought about that.
I did not note that the clean vocals felt low in the mix. I had to consider it. Like I recognized that there was a lot more synth in this than the first one. Just filling out the back with like the big epic, especially in the chorus, like
Yes.
it's not noodly. It's just very choral.
Yes,
very
that's very Scar Symmetry. Yeah.
okay. And then to sort of build on to what you said about the mix. At one point, I remember hearing a cymbal doing something back, rear left sort of, and I thought, this is the first time that anything in this whole mix has sounded like it was coming from a place instead of everywhere. Like it's very oddly ethereal in terms of like, it's just kind of spread out. It's almost like a smear. Like I can hear you talking through the music, which is something that we've struggled with in the setup that we're using occasionally. Yeah. And it's almost like it's just kind of spread just thin enough where the directness of your vocal coming into my ears can get through it, despite the fact that this is supposed to be like huge, loud, heavy metal music that takes up all of every inch of every part of the frequency spectrum and just blows your brains apart. And it's like, I can hear you talking through that. Like it seems it's a really weirdly indirect mix.
It doesn't feel though to me like it's certainly not lacking in high end like a lot of stuff recently.
Right.
I do feel like there's nice chunky lows in there when they're there.
Right. And that's the thing that I find so odd about trying to assess the mix is like, I don't hear anything missing from this. It just doesn't, it's not, I don't know. It just doesn't seem very thick.
And there was that one part of the song that to me sounded terrible because he was playing the bass, right? And there was this cool bass line that I actually heard. Is probably the first time I've ever heard a bass guitar on a Scar Symmetry song. He was doing a cool little prog bass part, and then the next part went like up higher, and bass completely disintegrated.
Yeah,
there was
totally
no bass.
vanished.
And the thing
Intentionally, of course, but interesting.
yeah, and I know why that happened, because he was playing high notes on the bass. He was trying to be all impressive on the bass. But the thing is, when you did that, there's no low end in the song anymore. And so you need to add sub bass. You need to add a synth that's low in there, or the song sounds like from this to like to this.
Yeah, I thought it was just I didn't realize that he was playing high on the bass. I thought they just dropped the bass out for that's the effect of the song.
That to me is like a very amateur-y thing to have in a mix. When the bass player plays high notes and all the bass goes away because he's playing high notes. And, you know, I've had problems with that before and things, and it's like you got to just go drop in like a low synth or something to make it feel like the song is still the same vertical distance. Like it's taking up the same amount of bandwidth. Because you can't just have the song all of a sudden go down like this. Like, to me, that's like that shouldn't happen here. Like, these guys, to me, have always been like so good with their production and stuff that like this is very strange to me. And that's why I keep thinking, like, I wonder if they were trying to do this a different way on purpose. You know, like
I doubt that, especially a band that's been doing this long and has already had several albums sound as good as they do. There's no way that this sounds like this on accident, you know?
That's what I would think too, unless he sent it to mastering somewhere and the mastering guy didn't do what he wanted. That's the only thing I could think too, if it's mastering. So, I don't know. There was a part in there, sort of like 3/4 of the way through the song, where the singer did like a singy talky thing, kind of. It wasn't talking, but he sang in a very different way, and you could really hear his accent. Because these guys all have very pronounced accents. They're from Sweden.
Yeah, where are they from?
Sweden. And they have Swedish accents when they're talking in English. And you could really hear that, which I'm totally fine with. It didn't bother me at all.
Right.
But during that part of the song, I don't recall ever having heard them do that kind of singing in a song before. So that to me was a whole new part. And it was kind of hard to hear it almost and understand what he was singing, because I feel like the clean vocals are a little low in the mix. So I don't know. Let's listen to the next song with everything we've been talking about and see what we think. So those are the first two singles. This next song's much shorter. This is only, a minute shorter, I guess. This is Overworld. Are you ready, Chris?
Yep, I am.
All right. 3, 2, 1. Saying like a single word. It's weird. I feel like I'm not doing a good reaction because I'm not saying anything. Okay, I'm recording again. Okay, we had to just stop recording because I was listening to the song, jamming out, looked over, Chris was gone again.
Yep, and I couldn't get back in. And I started the first 20 seconds of that song. I started the song before on accident, so everything about it was a pain in my ass.
Okay, so did you listen to the whole song then, or?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, I think this is not good sounding.
Interesting. I'm telling you, I think the more I hear it, the more I think there is nothing that is anywhere specific. The whole mix, guitars, vocals, everything is just like spread out. I almost wanted to think of it like if you were looking at the mix left and right, top down, it looks like a snow angel where you've just got like just the two sides where it's like there's nothing directly in the center.
Mm-hmm.
There's just this sort of like 10 degrees to 90 degrees for everything in the song. And it's a really weird situation.
I think that the reason it feels that way is because the kick is such a weenie kick. Like, it doesn't sound like a big beefy kick drum. It sounds like,
but I mean, even the vocals, like there's no vocals dead center. Like, there was a whole section in that song where the vocal was playing the same part as like the synth or the guitar or something, and the vocals were really low under that, pretty far.
Well,
down.
that's one thing that I think it is my opinion that the clean vocals are over compressed. For some reason, but it's just those. I feel like when he's singing, he's going but when he goes it just like gets smashed into nothing. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's because when they were recording, they recorded the compressor they recorded it to the track, and rather than recording a really dynamic track and compressing it after the fact, they had him sing and they had the compressor dialed up too much, and he started singing, but I don't know though. I understand what you mean. When the clean vocals are there, it does sound like they're all spread very wide. And that is a pretty common thing, like have all the harmony vocals just as loud as the lead vocal. I don't necessarily feel like it's just coming from the sides. I can still hear some vocals in the middle, which is why it's not making me rage like that newest Blue October album.
Fair.
But I do feel like the screaming vocals are in the middle, and so that is definitely middle. At least I feel. And so that's why I don't mind it as much, especially when he's doing stuff in the middle and then the singing vocals, and then they're kind of back and forthing it or doing a call and response type of thing. There, I feel like it's working really well. And so, but to me, it's just like the kick and the snare are such weenie kick and snare. And that is why I just keep thinking, like, did they try to do this in such a way that that's like the actual real kick and the real snare sound? Like, is this... I know that that's the way Soilwork recorded their album last year. They did not use any drum replacement. They did not use any pitch correction. They did not use anything. They recorded it old school, which is, in my opinion, to the detriment of the recording. We have all this wonderful modern technology, and if you heard this song on the radio next to an I See Stars song, which one do you think sounds more high fidelity?
Right.
And I have not heard the newest I See Stars song, I should say that. Or the last.
It doesn't sound anything. But it's not heads and tails, streets ahead of anything they've done in the past, And right. I don't know if it was I was talking to. I think it might have been Caleb, but we were talking about how I See Stars, as wonderful as they are in so many ways, Devin Oliver's tendency to have just these really big, wet vocals keeps them from it's hard to keep them above the water in the mix. And we struggle with that. But otherwise, I don't know. That was just kind of my first example that came to mind of like a heavy group that uses a lot of electronic elements that's just got a lot of beef in it.
Yeah, just like a modern... Or we butter the bread with, well, you don't know, we butter the bread with butter, or Lorna Shore, or anything like that, which those bands are all
Spirit Box.
They're all very different, which I will say Spirit Box's album did surprise me at the end when it did come out, because it was a little bit more mid-rangey than I anticipated.
Sure.
This has no mid-range to it at all. There's it totally was all scooped out, which maybe that's part of the reason we're thinking about it the way we are. But to me, the thing I just keep coming back to is the guitars just it almost sounds like there's reverb on the guitars, which you should not have reverb on distorted electric guitars. And so
it just turns it into mud.
Yeah. To me, the guitars sound like Devin Townsend guitars. So for anyone who's watching this that understands what I mean there, to me, that is one of the things that has always held me back from enjoying Devin Townsend and any of the music that he has produced for other artists, like Hypocrisy and all that kind of stuff. I just don't think that the way he records guitars is very good. And I know the reason he does that and the reason his guitars sound the way they do is because it sounds better when you're playing higher stuff, right? But to me, if you're recording guitars for a metal album, you should record the lower chunky stuff completely separately from the higher pitch stuff. It should be done completely separately, two separate sounding. I don't care. Use different amps, use different guitars, and then just mix it together so that it sounds as good as possible. But this, to me, sounds like they're focusing more on like they want to do more like this stuff rather than this stuff, you know? And a majority of the song is this stuff, but that doesn't sound as good. It just sounds washy. It sounds like...
And you know what it reminds me of? I have 2 EQ presets in my car. One for music and one for when I listen to books and stuff. Because if you use the music one, then it's just like Boom City. You can't understand anybody.
Sure.
And it's like sometimes I'll forget and I'll start listening to music on the audiobook preset. And it's like, why does this sound so this way? And then I switch it back over and it's like, oh, there's all that low end I was missing.
Yeah, it's really weird. Like it's really disappointing.
Like there's nothing
to me.
under 100 hertz in this whole album.
Yeah, but I do feel like, yeah, maybe. I mean, seeing stuff like that, when we say stuff like that and that there's really no mids, to me, that could be mastering.
That's fair. Yeah,
all that stuff could be mastering. And I hate the idea of an album being ruined in mastering. Like that is like one of my nightmare scenarios would be to like work so hard at making an album and then send it off to somebody and get it back and have it be ruined and not have enough money, or have that person have a bigger name than I do. So I have to leave it the way he did it because his name's bigger than mine.
Yeah. Not enough money, not enough time.
Yeah, that's such a hard thing. And especially after 9 years, this should be the greatest. This should be their masterpiece. This should be, and it's definitely not. Like the whole time we were listening to that, I was like, if I played you a song off of this, it would be like it's from a different era. I mean,
I'd be curious to hear it just for comparison's sake. Yeah, like I thought even during like the second song, I thought if we had one song from a proper album of theirs just mixed in here somewhere, and it went to that and then kept right on playing, it's like I wonder how much different it would be.
Yeah, I really want to do that. So let's listen to a couple more songs, and if we're still feeling disappointed, maybe we'll do that. And then if you want, you can leave and I can finish it myself, especially if we're going to keep having technical difficulties.
Yeah.
But for now, let's just keep plugging away at it. We're on track 5 now. Or no, tracks 4. Altergeist.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Because 3 went straight into 4.
Right, which I did enjoy the way that worked. Okay, now this is going to be right bang in because I heard at the beginning of the next one when it looped into it. So, all right, ready? 3. Okay, wait, hold on. This is like 6 minute, 12 seconds. So this is quite a long one again. So, all right, 3, 2, 1. See, now this sounds good. This is awesome. I had to check that you were still there.
Oh yeah, I'm here.
Why does it? Notice how it sounds good because all the other stuff is gone.
whatever that banging is like the biggest thing that's happened so far in the whole song.
Yeah.
It's huge. Reverb's like 12 seconds, but
yes.
It also lives almost entirely by itself, way out back almost behind your head.
Yeah.
Split-wise. I really hate how long that reverb lasts.
I like how the songs are like fading into one another.
Yeah.
Like connecting. That's cool. So that was like the verse there was like straight up black metal.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized something. That is what black metal sounds like. Like this whole album is mixed the way black metal sounds like.
Interesting.
But the thing is, black metal is known for not sounding good. So, like, why would you do that? Like, it's very like in metal, we did it with Primal Waters every time. You have to, when you're doing blast beats, when you're going, and I don't even mean on the kick drum, but yeah, when you're going on the kick drum, right?
Yeah.
You can't have that be the same sound as when you're just going. Like it can't, right? Because when you're just going boo tap boo tap boo tap, like your kick drum can sound like a kick drum. When you're going, it can't sound like a kick drum because it'd be too big, right? You have to have a different sound.
Oh yeah, yep.
And so normally, what you do is you just have a different sounding kick for that part, right? And then you have to do all sorts of funky EQ stuff. And so that's why it's really hard when you do blast beats in songs to make it sound natural, like it's the same thing, like it's within the same song. But bands, there's lots of ways to do it nowadays. People are pretty good with it usually. What it sounds like to me is that kick drum that they have selected to sound good during the blast beat part is just the kick drum they're using throughout the rest of the song as well. Mm-hmm. And that shouldn't be. Okay, so do you want to listen?
I don't know how to articulate this.
Do you want to listen to a song off of this instead next?
Yeah.
Okay.
Real quick.
While we talk about it, I'm gonna rip it right from here. So everybody, whoever watches this, if I ever post this, can know that I'm just taking it literally straight from here right to Chris and Mai's ears. So I'm not doing anything funky.
All I can say is that for some reason it all sounds far away.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to figure out what that translates to in terms of like, is there a lot of reverb? Is there a lot of not? Is there no something? But I feel like there's a buffer. There's a 10-foot buffer between me and every single thing happening. Nothing is right up front. Nothing is over here. There's no distance dynamic. It's just like, it's 2D just in a screen like this. And that doesn't make any sense, but that's the best that I've got for what it sounds weird about it.
Okay, I'm ripping the CD so my computer might start to not sound like...
It's like instead of being in the middle of a band, I'm watching this band play in the driveway across the street.
Yeah, it's very strange. But at the same time, I wouldn't say that it sounds... like I've heard way worse sounding stuff.
Yeah.
It's just like...
It doesn't sound bad, it's just not very interesting.
Yeah, and the other thing too is like I really wish that I had... Chris Schoenberg called me last night at like 10:45 when he was driving home from work or whatever he was doing, and he wanted to talk about the first two songs off this album because he listened to them, because I made a comment to him in our chat thread where I was like, you should listen to it and then tell me how terrible it is or whatever. And he listened to him and he said what we weren't able to talk about it very much because I hadn't listened to it and he had. His one comment was that he was really impressed with the guitar playing, and I think he more probably meant the lead stuff. Sure. Which I will say, per Nelson's like guitar soloing and stuff, I said earlier that like my favorite guitar solo of all time might be a Scar Symmetry song. I feel like after a certain point, Scar Symmetry guitar solos just started to be sweeping on the guitar, just like fast technical sweeping, and it became much less melodic, which is what I vastly prefer. then I feel like over the course of 2 albums, he did that enough that once we get to this album, their phase 1, remember we're listening to phase 2 right now that just came out today. Phase 1, I feel like he got back to doing a bit more melodic stuff mixed with like moments of like, you know, he'd be like do rather than just going like the whole time. And so yeah, I don't know. And like you said, there's like no airiness to the mix. Like I thought this song sounded the best when everything left and it was just that nice little moment in there, which again, Scar Symmetry never does stuff like that, but they also don't ever do straight up like black metal blast beats stuff like that. They never do that.
Oh, wow.
They don't do, that's not the way.
Because they're really going wild with those.
Yeah. And that's why I'm wondering if the album's mixed that way.
And
Okay,
like compare the mix on this to Load even.
Oh yeah.
Load sounds incredible.
Yeah, it's completely different style of stuff, though.
It is.
So it's
and
hard.
and
that's the thing I keep fighting with myself over the guitars. Like, I'm wondering if he's just doing different style of guitar playing on this, and because of that, it doesn't sound the way I want it to because he's just like literally doing a different style of guitar. So hopefully,
I just can't think of a single thing to point out and say this is noteworthy in how good it sounds. Like, there's no. Like, I can't say the drums sound great, the guitar sounds great, the vocals sound great. Like, nothing sounds great. It all just sounds. And it doesn't sound terrible.
Right.
It's not egregious. It's, you know, you're not going to have to make a video where you go and bump the EQ up on the first 1,000 hertz.
Right.
But it just isn't remarkable.
And the thing is, like, that song for me had so far what we've heard the coolest like synth piano part, right? It was almost like a piratey part with like some kind of like a happy, cool sounding thing, and that is much more reminiscent of what they would have in their background of their songs in the past, but it wasn't necessarily that focused, you know. So I feel like they're trying to. It's really weird. Like I feel like they're trying to do more technical things. But because they're doing that, they're losing all of the like heaviness of the mix. But the vocals are heavier than they've ever been. But the singing vocals are less present than they've ever been. Even though they're doing cool singing parts, the solo has no high end in it at all. Zero. And that's fine. You can't have too much high end in something like that. Okay, so if you go back to that root folder, just the Patrick's reactions and not the Scar Symmetry folder, there's a song in there called Limits to Infinity.
Yep.
You see it?
Yep.
Okay. I don't know if this will probably screw up my whole reaction because
Yeah, you mix songs and
we mix songs from albums, but we'll see. Okay, so let's listen to this and we'll just see what you think, okay? Maybe we're crazy and this is going to sound even worse and I'm just dumb.
That will be fascinating.
But I really doubt it. Okay, ready?
Yep.
3, 2, 1.
Immediately.
Yeah, right?
Immediately excellent. Why?
It's also way louder.
What?
It's way louder.
It is louder, but that's not going to help. But turning it up won't fix the other one.
No.
So everything's so distinct. Oh, it's so much better.
Those vocals sound so good.
And like, even the spread on that is further. There's so much more space that they're giving everything.
Yes.
Man, this is fantastic. We can listen to the whole thing.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? If I remember correctly, the bridge in this song goes crazy.
Okay.
So huge.
Yeah, enormous. But not all the way over there.
No,
just
no.
right here and here.
Yes. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Nice. Tremendous.
Right. I mean, just a
That
different
has so much
stratosphere.
depth. And it makes me think this new one is like watching a concert through TV speakers.
Okay. Yes.
There's just no depth to it.
Yes. So, do you still have the new album pulled up?
Yep.
Let's go right into the next track and just see how it feels. Let's just listen to the first 30 seconds.
Is that 5 or 6?
Let's do 5 again because we know how that one starts.
Okay.
Or wait, 4. Let's do 4 again because it starts right away. Okay, just so well our ears remember. Okay, 3, 2, 1. That's enough. That's enough. Right? It's bad.
It's like all in that other song, Limits to Infinity, every piece of the song, like you were talking about earlier with the mix, like you record this thing here with this thing, and then you switch a bunch of stuff to record this part of it, and then you mix it all together. This is like, we've got this mix preset here. Now record everything, and then just stick it onto the front.
Yeah, it just is. It's flat. The mix is flat. It's what you said the first song. It sounds flat. The mix is flat. But it's bad. Like it legitimately now hearing that, I was thinking at first when that song first started, I was like, "Oh, well the kick doesn't sound that much different. And the guitars have more lows in them." But other than that, it doesn't sound that much different. And then the vocals came in, and then the song just kept going, and I was like, no, this.
There's so much depth to the way that's mixed.
This is something to be excited about. This is like really good sounding, sort of old school death metal, because metal's not like this much anymore. It's completely different. This new album, phase 2, apparently something happened between phase 1 and phase 2.
Well, 10 years, if anything.
It's mixed bad. Now I have to ask you the question, Chris.
Here it comes.
I have to ask you the question that is the thing that scares me to death and keeps me up at night. Does this new album sound the way it does because they had it mastered for vinyl?
See, you've talked about that before, and I'm never sold on that narrative. I just don't think so.
I hope so. There's no reason, because a vinyl can play low frequencies. A vinyl can play dynamic audio. So you're correct in thinking that that shouldn't be the case. It just is something that scares me to death.
I feel it's weird because, man, I don't know. It seems like we're in the middle of a really strange shift in how music sounds.
I think most people would be able to listen to this though and go, "No, this is a downgrade."
I think so, and I'm not saying that it's just a byproduct of a different era of music, because there'd be no reason to make music sound worse as technology improves. I feel like because there's so many things happening that sound better than ever. That Ruin Brothers album that you sent me the other day, that sounds better than just about anything ever. And of course, it's a completely different style of music, but I feel like there's certain parts of music that are just like really getting up there, and certain other types of music that are falling, and it's like the rift is getting wider. The canyon between them all is getting wider. Like pop music, some pop music, and I don't know if it's just a money thing. I don't know what the deal is, but
the thing is, in this case, like the same man did this and what we're listening to.
I would love to know. I want in the whole world is to be able to ask them why.
It's got to be the mastering.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Mastering, from what I understand about mastering, is that it's a very, very subtle process.
Well, it can be, but it also doesn't. It also isn't. It can be, but
it doesn't. Yeah, because it's like you could take a song that's finished and throw an EQ on it and then wreck it. Just turn a bunch of knobs and wreck it.
But the thing is, like, mastering my own album last year and having to do the process like multiple times, like mastering is all about sacrifice, what you're willing to sacrifice to get the music to be what it needs to be in the final product. And that is absolutely true. Like, the moment you start mastering things, you have to start making compromises. Like, the fun thing is when you master something and then you listen to it back afterwards and you're like, yes, this sounds great. Like, I can't believe that it sounds better now than it did before. And usually what's happening there is everything was very loose in the mix before, and mastering just kind of compresses everything together. You know, you're compressing a stereo, just the stereo track, rather than each individual thing on a track by itself, and then just bouncing it down, all layering on top of each other. Then when you get into mastering, what you're doing is to just the stereo track. So I don't know. We shouldn't talk about mastering too long, because I don't know if that's what's happening here. I have
I don't know enough about mastering.
Right. I have a sneaking suspicion that the mastering is definitely a big part to why this album sounds the way it does. But having just listened to those two different things, it's clear that's a night and day difference. And
it is.
I was so not at all worried about this album. Like, I was so confident. It's the same dude. He's been talking this album up. They've released their singles. I've seen people commenting on the videos where they talk, not the videos, on I never went to their videos, but when they would post stuff about the new album, people would be like, I love the two singles, love the way it sounds, can't wait to hear the whole album, that kind of stuff. And the thing is, you and I know that most people don't know enough to know that something even sounds good or bad at all. And if they're probably just listening to it on their phone anyway, they don't care.
I'm telling you, man, the bar, in a way, I mean this in a way that is not to insult anybody, but the bar for what normal people know about audio is in the dirt by 4 feet. Like, it never,
absolutely.
You just, even within the discipline of my own career, like, people who make games for a living, devs, don't know anything about audio. Nobody knows anything about audio. And so it's like, it's just this really weird thing that people forget to care about because they don't think it matters. And it's a really weird phenomenon, and it's a bummer.
Same thing for me. I've been editing the same people recording themselves doing nothing but talking for 12 years now. And these people don't know anything. They don't know anything at all about audio. They don't try to make themselves sound better. They don't try, and part of that's on me and my job as the editor and all that stuff, but that goes way beyond, that goes into too much to even discuss now. But you're right. And the bad thing about that is you can't trust people who don't know's opinion on things that they don't know about, because if I made a song and I showed it to my mom, first of all, she's going to love it because she's my mom, and that's her job to love everything I do. But she's going to be like, but seriously, I mean, within reason. but she's gonna she doesn't she'll just be like, it sounds fantastic. Like I had a lady that I used to work with when I worked at the recording studio in Omaha, and she was a really fascinating and interesting lady, but I would show her stuff that I worked on, and she would just have a heart attack, like acting like it's the greatest thing she's ever heard. So amazing. I should be on television performing this song. It's so fantastic. Like I should be in the biggest. And she legitimately, seriously thought that. But the thing is, like, I know that it's not that. I know it's not.
It's so hard.
And people just, it's so hard when you ask people for their opinions on things and they don't know. Because you don't get the right opinions. But then it's hard for me too on the other end, because like if I make a song and I show Chris Schoenberg the song, right? Yeah. And the song's not a thrash song with only distorted vocals, what's he going to say? It's not metal. And so I can't trust his opinion on it either, you know? So it's like, but whatever, that's neither here nor there. So I'm just saying, like, the guy who made this album knows better, and he probably knows that this album doesn't sound as good as it could. And that is just, I mean, this is devastating to me, because this was probably, and if I'm being honest, with all the music that's came out this year, this was probably the most anticipated album that I had this year. Like, the only thing that I would be anticipating more than this would be when And One eventually releases their album, which for right now we don't have any plans on that, but it's almost done, I think, or it's done and they're just working on it. And One, or if Raunchy finally decides to poop and get off the pot.
Convey,
but we think they would release a good album though, I'm sure. But that's what I thought about these guys.
Because I was going to say, that confidence sounds awfully familiar.
That's what I thought about The Heavy. That's what I thought about Black Keys. That's what I thought about Blue October. And in the case of some of those artists, they made decisions that I didn't personally care for, so I can't say that the Blue October album is subjectively bad. I can't say that it's objectively bad. I can just say that to me, it is subjectively bad. Yeah. This, we just did an A-B comparison. It is objectively worse sounding than their previous album. And I do not think that a band should ever have an album that sounds worse than their previous album. Ever.
I know it.
I do not think that should ever be the case. I understand if a band is like having
especially without a genre shift. Like, they move more into the death metal, black metal thing that you're talking about here. Yeah. But that's not the same as doing a country album, you know.
Right. It's the same elements though. You know, and I will say, I want to add a caveat to that real quick. If a band is like being pushed by like, for example, I keep seeing Flaw, right? The band Flaw. You remember them from when we were in high school?
It sounds familiar, but only just. Oh,
man. Flaw, their one song called Payback was like such a huge deal for me when I was in, oh my God, it's classic.
Anyway,
they were on a record label. They were getting pushed. They went on tour with Seven Dust and probably Metallica and stuff at times. Like, they were huge, right? So then the record industry, the record label industry goes away. They're not on a record label. They don't make an album for 10 years, and they come back just themselves, recording themselves, making their own music, putting it out themselves on their own record label. I don't expect that to sound as good as on a record label, you know, being pushed by a record label thing. So like, that's one example where a band I could see would make sense to have them sound not as good. However, I would expect them to go as far as they can to make it sound as good as possible. This dude has already gone as far as he can to make an album sound as good as possible. It's the same dude, for the most part, working on this album. Why doesn't it sound at least that good? And I would even accept it if it was like several like notches or rungs on the ladder below that. But to me, this is like a story down. Like and the thing is, it's the mix. The mix is the problem here. It's not the songwriting, even though I definitely think that they're doing different things.
I was just going to say, I think we were about to say the same thing. We've got a lot of album left.
I was going to just stop.
Oh, you're going to stop?
I was going to just have us stop. Yeah, we've already been recording. We've listened to 5 songs. We've recorded for an hour and a half. The first 30 minutes of which was me talking about how this is one of my favorite bands of all time. And the next hour talking about how the mix is bad. So I don't feel the need personally to go through the rest of the album for the recording. I can burn this well, I can burn this on a CD, but I don't even know if I'll order the CD because I probably will, just because it'll look nice having. Although these stupid idiots made a digipack, you're gonna tell me you're gonna have your whole catalog be like this, right? And then you're gonna release the new album on a digipack.
What is that?
A digipack is a CD and a cardboard sleeve.
Oh, sure.
A CD and a cardboard sleeve. That's what they're called. It's called a digipack. But like,
yeah. Do you have? And I imagine it doesn't have removable art.
No, not in a digipack. It's printed on the cardboard.
Yeah. I was going to say, you should find a way to print the art and get yourself a jewel case and make your own damn case.
No, that's way too much work.
Okay.
But the thing is, like, oh, Chris, this was going to be on my list for the year. This was going to be probably top 5. If I love what we've heard so far, and if it was mixed good, it's heavier than I thought. I was thinking it was going to go the whole other way. I thought it was going to be more prog metal, prog rock, less black metal. And
you should load it up and see if you can master it different.
I can't, though. The thing is, the damage has already been done to it.
Yeah.
I can't add the frequencies back to it that were taken away. You know, if I had I would try that if I had access to the unmastered files.
Oh yeah, if you had stems, you could go wild and be like, "This is what a mix sounds like, clowns." Like,
yeah, well, and I don't want to make myself sound like I'm some great audio engineer because I'm definitely not. But
of course not.
But the thing is, like, and the thing is, it's on. And I think it's just for distribution, but like every one of their albums has been on Nuclear Blast. Every one of their albums has the Nuclear Blast thing right here. And this new one is too. It just...
man,
why do bands keep doing this to me, Chris?
It's the kind of thing that I feel like you should be able to ask them. Be like, hey, I was doing this reaction. I noticed that there's a very specific way that this sounds different and I think worse than previous albums. Like, what... Why? They can't not know.
I know, but I just don't want them to get mad at me.
I understand.
Which I know sounds so stupid, but like...
I know that there's a way to present that concern or question without it being like, I think you guys are crap, this thing you made sucks.
Oh, I'm sure. Yes, I'm sure there is a way to do it. And I mean, and maybe I need to go look up interviews with the guy and stuff, because I'm sure he's doing a lot of press and stuff for it now. The album just came out today.
Yeah.
So I'm sure he's doing lots of stuff. And I try to stay away from interviews and things with the band before we listen to it, because I don't want to have my opinion, messed up before we even start. But I don't know. Yeah. Like, and I even told him, I was like, hey, I want to do a reaction video. I'm really excited for this. So now I wouldn't even like send it to him because it's just crapping on the album, which I didn't want to do. I hate doing that, but I can't. It doesn't sound good.
Right. There's an integrity to be upheld, damn it.
Why do bands keep doing this to me, Chris? Why do bands keep... Why?
This thing that they make, that they do for me and not for themselves. And then...
You can't tell me that they wanted it to sound like this, though.
Right. Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. Like, this is probably something that also happened to them.
Yes. Yes. I would agree with that. Or they like, and that's the other thing too I've mentioned before, like so many times, like maybe for whatever reason, this album, when they got the master back, they listened to it in whatever room they have, and it sounded phenomenal. And now that it's getting out into the public, it doesn't sound that good on the way we're listening to it. You're listening on completely different like headphones than I am, but we're talking about the same issues. So we're clearly hearing the same things.
Right. And like, we don't have cheap gear. Like, these were expensive. I've got this thing. I've got this program that I use to, make a neutral EQ curve for everything that I listen to via, built to spec on these headphones. Like, and we're still complaining about the same thing. So
this is just so disappointing to me. I mean, I was so ready. I mean, you could tell anybody watching at the beginning of the video, I was just excited and pumped and like ready to go. There was an energy I had, and I was just so excited.
You were sweating.
I was excited to have my face blown off, and it just isn't as good as I think it should be.
Yeah.
And maybe that's me issue, but I feel like this could have been better. Unlike that Diablo Swing Orchestra album, the elements were all there. Maybe I wouldn't have necessarily liked it as much as their older stuff because of the technique that they were using when they were playing and like what they were going for. But had they executed what they were going for flawlessly and I still disliked it, then that would be on me. But because I feel like it objectively sounds so much worse than even I feel like if we even listen to a song off their first album, which sounds so much more raw and dated and older and stuff, and that's from 2005, like even that album I feel sounds way better than this. And that's so much more loose and you can definitely hear the amateurness to it. And this though, I don't know, it just, damn it. Damn it all.
Damn it. And he's gone.
Oh, well, Chris is gone. So, of course, I say damn it all and it ends. One thing I want to say, because I'm sure people will get mad, if I decide to upload this, which maybe I never will, if I decide to actually upload this, which I probably will, because this made me mad, if I could understand how you watching this, I love Scar Symmetry. You're being a fuddy-duddy. What are you doing? Listen to the whole album. You can't have an opinion because you didn't listen to the whole thing.
No, that's not true. In this instance, and the thing that's wrong with it is not going to suddenly go away. You know.
Well, I'm assuming, but I just, like, I'm still looking forward to listening to the rest of the album, but I will do that on my own time.
Yeah.
I just don't want to listen to the rest of the album, be distracted the entire time that I hate it. I barely said one word when we were listening at all. And to me, that's not a good reaction. You know, I understand people don't want me to talk over the whole thing, but like, if I'm going to just sit here and play the song, why don't I just cut that part out of the video? There's no value to it. You watching this video can go listen to the album on your own, you know? And if I'm just going to sit here and make disappointed faces, I guess that is reacting, but you know, the song, you know, I don't know. Now we're going to legitimately end the video. Thank you very much all for watching. Please try to understand if anyone from Scar Symmetry ever hears this, I think it's pretty obvious that I love your band, but I unfortunately don't enjoy this album as much. So if you want, let me know your thoughts on the album in the comments. And this goes for anybody watching, not just the people from the band. Like, let me know your thoughts on this album in the comments and tell me, don't tell me that I'm listening to it wrong, but try to, if you want, tell me a different way to try to approach it so that I can appreciate it more. I will definitely listen to the whole album, probably tonight, and I will try to learn to appreciate it. And maybe in future videos on my channel, I'll be like, I was totally wrong, but I don't think that's going to be the case.
Yeah.
So,
not after comparing it to that previous album.
Yeah, and that's much closer to the sound of their rest of their catalog than this new album. So, all right, thank you very much, and I will see you all next time.